My sister slept with my boyfriend. Should I invite her to my wedding? The moment Daniel knelt on one knee, the world around me seemed to fade into a soft, hazy blur, leaving only the two of us in a perfect, crystalline bubble of joy. After 4 years of building a life together, his proposal wasn't a shock, but the sheer force of the happiness that washed over me was something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a very long time. Daniel is my safe harbor, the steady hand that guided me back to shore after I had been lost in a sea of familial turmoil and shattered trust for years. He is kind, patient, and possesses a goofy, infectious sense of humor that taught me how to laugh again, how to breathe again. Our relationship was the cornerstone of a new life I had painstakingly built for myself, a life defined by peace, stability, and a love that felt as real and solid as the ground beneath my feet. As we dove into the exhilarating chaos of wedding planning, I held onto one unwavering vision for our special day. It would be an intimate celebration of that love, a day of pure joy, surrounded only by those who genuinely supported us. It would be, I was determined, a day completely and utterly free from the suffocating drama that had defined my past. I should have known my mother would never let it be that simple. On the surface, my family is the picture of suburban normalcy. We don't have explosive, plate-smashing arguments at Thanksgiving. Our dysfunction is a quieter, more insidious poison. It's a culture of secrets and silence, where deep, painful wounds are meticulously swept under a threadbare rug of polite smiles and forced pleasantries. My mother is the chief custodian of this rug. She abhors conflict with a religious fervor, yet paradoxically, she is the primary architect of it. In her relentless pursuit of a flawless family facade, she employs a potent cocktail of guilt, tears, and masterful emotional manipulation, all in the name of keeping the peace. The epicenter of this lifelong storm, the recurring character in my personal drama, has always been my older sister, Sarah. Sarah and I were once inseparable, two halves of a whole, navigating the treacherous waters of childhood with a shared language of whispered secrets and elaborate inside jokes. We were a team, but that bond, which I had once believed to be unbreakable, was irrevocably shattered during my junior year of college. It was a casualty of the kind of profound betrayal that leaves permanent, jagged scars on the soul. I was dating Derek, my first real love, the kind of all-consuming, cinematic love that you only experience when you're young and foolish enough to believe in forevers. We had been together for 3 years, a lifetime in collegiate terms, and our conversations were already drifting toward engagement rings and picket fences. My trust in him was absolute, a blind, youthful faith that I had, by extension, placed in my sister as well. That faith was a fragile, beautiful thing, and it was obliterated into a million irreparable pieces the day I discovered that Sarah and Derek had been sleeping together behind my back. It wasn't a drunken, one-time mistake made at a party. It was a calculated, sustained affair, a secret they had nurtured in the shadows of my own ignorance. When I finally confronted her, my world crumbling around me, my heart a raw, open wound, her reaction was the final, cruelest blow. There was no apology, no flicker of remorse, not even a hint of shame in her cold, clear eyes. She just shrugged, a picture of casual, almost bored indifference, and delivered the line that would echo in the chambers of my mind for years to come. "Well," she said with a dismissive little smirk that still haunts my nightmares, "if he cheated on you, maybe you just weren't enough for him." I walked away from her that day, from the smoldering ruins of my relationship with Derek, and from the naive girl I used to be, and I never looked back. The breakup was painful, but the wound Sarah inflicted was a different kind of agony. It was a deep, festering injury that poisoned my ability to trust and shattered my self-esteem into dust. My mother, in her infinite and maddening capacity for denial, treated this catastrophic betrayal as nothing more than a minor sorority squabble. "Oh, you girls," she'd sigh with a wave of her hand. "Sisters shouldn't hold grudges over a boy. You know how men are, they make mistakes." I tried, desperately and repeatedly, to make her understand the depth of the wound, to explain that this wasn't about a boy, it was about a fundamental violation of trust and love. But she refused to see it. In her carefully curated world, acknowledging the severity of Sarah's actions would mean acknowledging that our family was not the perfect, harmonious unit she so desperately pretended it was. It was far easier to label me as overly sensitive and dramatic, and to relentlessly champion the hollow mantra that family is forever, no matter how toxic or destructive that family might be. I eventually gave up trying to make her understand. I stopped talking about it, packed up my pain, and focused all my energy on healing, on building a new life for myself, one that was geographically and emotionally as far away from Sarah as I could possibly get. That new life, thankfully, led me to Daniel. And now, as we meticulously planned our wedding, a sacred celebration of the healthy, trusting love I had finally found, the ghosts of the past came roaring back with a vengeance. The moment my mother heard the news of our engagement, the pressure campaign began. "You'll be inviting Sarah, of course?" she asked during our first celebratory phone call, her tone a statement, not a question. When I gently but firmly told her that no, Sarah would not be on the guest list, the line went quiet for a beat, followed by a sharp, theatrical gasp. "You can't be serious," she said, her voice dripping with a disbelief that felt entirely manufactured. "She is your sister. You cannot just exclude your own sister from your wedding day." I attempted to calmly reiterate my reasons, to explain that my wedding day was meant to be a sanctuary, a space free from the painful memories and toxic energy that Sarah's presence would inevitably bring. She wasn't listening. The well-worn tools of her emotional manipulation were immediately deployed. The guilt-tripping began. "How do you think this is going to make the family look?" she pressed, her voice taking on a wounded tone. "Do you really want to be the one to create all of this drama by leaving her out?" The irony was so thick and suffocating I could have choked on it. I held my ground, but she was relentless, a force of nature in her quest for a picture-perfect family reunion. Over the next few weeks, my phone became a weapon she wielded against me with surgical precision. The calls and texts were a constant, draining barrage of emotional blackmail. When her direct attacks failed to move me, she escalated, recruiting her flying monkeys, a couple of well-meaning but easily manipulated aunts and cousins, to do her bidding. I'd receive passive-aggressive texts about the importance of family unity and how heartbroken Grandma would be to see her granddaughters still fighting. The crescendo of her campaign was the inevitable ultimatum. She called me one evening, her voice trembling with what I knew was manufactured emotion. "If Sarah isn't welcome at your wedding," she declared, her voice cracking for dramatic effect, "then I don't think I can come either." I refused to be put in the middle and forced to take sides between my own two daughters. It was a masterstroke of manipulation, an attempt to frame her threat as a neutral act of maternal peace while delivering a clear, punishing message. My peace of mind was less important than her comfort. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. The thought of my own mother boycotting one of the most important days of my life was a knife to the heart. But Daniel, my steadfast rock, saw it for the manipulative gambit it was. "This is your day," he said, wrapping his arms around me as I cried in frustration. "This is our day. If she can't respect your boundaries and your feelings, then that is her issue, not yours. I will marry you with or without her there." His unwavering support was the anchor I needed in that emotional storm. It gave me the strength to stand my ground. To buy myself a temporary ceasefire, I told my mother I would think about it. But instead of a crisp, white invitation, I sent Sarah a letter. I poured every ounce of my unresolved pain and my newfound resolution onto the page. I explained, in painstaking detail, how her actions had shattered my ability to trust, how her callous lack of remorse had been a second, deeper betrayal that I had never recovered from. I told her that my wedding was a celebration of everything she had tried to destroy: love, trust, and unwavering commitment, and that her presence would be a dark cloud, a painful reminder of a past I was determined to leave behind. I ended by saying this wasn't about punishment or holding a grudge. It was about self-preservation. It was about protecting my own hard-won peace. Sarah's response was predictable. It came in the form of a volley of furious, typo-laden texts, accusing me of being petty and immature, of tearing the family apart over a stupid college mistake. My mother, of course, was her echo, calling me in tears to tell me how devastated Sarah was, how I was the one being cruel and unforgiving. I was done. I told my mom my decision was final, and then I stopped responding to both of them. The wedding day arrived, a perfect, sun-drenched afternoon filled with the scent of peonies and the sound of laughter. Sarah was not there. My mother was, but she wore her disapproval like a corsage, her smile tight and forced, her hugs perfunctory and brief. I didn't let her touch the edges of my joy. I was floating on a cloud of pure, unadulterated happiness, surrounded by people who were there to celebrate our love, not to perform a role in a tired, old family drama. Marrying Daniel, saying my vows to him in front of the people who truly mattered, felt like the ultimate victory, a definitive closing of a painful chapter and the beginning of a beautiful, peaceful new one. In the quiet, blissful aftermath of the wedding and our sun-soaked honeymoon, the fallout I had been bracing for began to rain down. Sarah's social media became a stage for her carefully crafted victimhood, filled with vague, pointed posts about the pain of family betrayal and people who can never move on from the past. My mother's texts became long, sorrowful manifestos detailing her profound disappointment in me and providing regular updates on how she'd never seen Sarah so upset. A few relatives even called to gently scold me, suggesting I had made the wrong, less peaceful choice. A part of me, the part that was raised from birth to be a peacemaker, to smooth things over, to prioritize the comfort of others over my own, felt a familiar, sickening pang of guilt. But the stronger part of me, the part that had spent years in therapy, clawing its way back to a place of self-worth and self-respect, knew with an unshakable certainty that I had done the only thing I could do. I had chosen peace. I had chosen joy. I had chosen myself. The weeks that followed our honeymoon were a masterclass in my mother's particular brand of emotional warfare. She didn't let up. If anything, her campaign intensified, fueled by a righteous indignation that I had dared to defy her vision of a perfectly harmonious family. I received a long, rambling email from her, a literary guilt trip that spanned several paragraphs. She wrote of her heartbreak and sleepless nights, painting a dramatic picture of a mother torn apart by her daughter's feud. She accused me of causing a permanent rift in the family, of being a cold, unrecognizable version of the daughter she had raised. The email was heavily peppered with updates on Sarah's devastation, how my actions had apparently plunged her into a deep depression. It was a manipulative narrative designed to cast me as the cruel, unfeeling villain and Sarah as the fragile, misunderstood victim. I read it, and then I read it again, a familiar, weary resignation settling over me. After a day of letting her words marinate, I composed a reply. I kept it short, calm, and resolute. I apologized that she was feeling hurt, but reiterated that I stood by my decision. This was never about being vindictive, I wrote. It was about protecting my own mental and emotional well-being. I ended by telling her I loved her, but that I would not engage in any further debate on the subject. I had hoped that my firm, unemotional boundary would be the end of it. I should have known better. My mother, in a move that still baffles me with its audacity, forwarded my email directly to Sarah. I know this because Sarah herself promptly replied to me, her own email a torrent of rage and blame. She called me bitter, immature, and accused me of being pathologically obsessed with playing the victim. In a particularly galling twist of logic, she claimed that Derek was the true villain of the story, and that she had been just as much of a victim as I was. That was the moment any lingering shred of familial obligation I felt toward her evaporated. Her complete and utter inability to take even a sliver of responsibility for her actions was breathtaking. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had actively and repeatedly chosen to betray me and then had the gall to position herself as a fellow casualty. I didn't reply to her email. There was no point. It was like arguing with a hurricane. Instead, I simply created a new filter in my inbox, one that sent any message from her email address directly to the trash. But the attacks continued on a more public front. Her Facebook page became a gallery of passive-aggressive memes and cryptic statuses about toxic people who can't handle a strong woman and letting go of those who are still stuck in the past. A few of our more gullible relatives would leave supportive comments, fanning the flames of her self-pity. It was a pathetic, transparent performance, and while it was infuriating, I refused to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. My mother continued her two-faced dance, speaking to me in clipped, cool tones while simultaneously playing the role of Sarah's staunchest defender. Every conversation was booby-trapped with casual mentions of my sister. I had coffee with Sarah yesterday. She's really struggling, she'd say, her voice dripping with meaning. It was a constant, low-grade campaign of psychological warfare, designed to wear me down, to make me feel guilty for the fallout of a fire I didn't even start. The situation reached a new level of absurdity when my mother, in a move of stunning tactical brilliance, decided to call for a family intervention. A group text was sent to me, Sarah, and a handful of our closest relatives. "I think it's time we all sat down and talked this through like adults," it read. The idea of being ambushed in a room full of people who had already taken sides, of being subjected to a kangaroo court where my feelings would be dismissed and my boundaries ignored, was my own personal version of hell. I texted back a polite but firm no, thank you. My refusal was met with a tearful, frantic phone call from my mother, begging me to reconsider, wailing about how families don't turn their backs on each other. I held my ground, explaining that a forced confrontation would only make things worse. She hung up on me, her disappointment a palpable thing even through the phone line. The intervention went on without me, and the aftermath was, predictably, brutal. My mother called to inform me of how healing it had been for Sarah, who had apparently cried and spoken at length about how much she missed me. Relatives who attended sent me messages, scolding me for my selfishness, for my refusal to give Sarah the gift of my forgiveness. They had all been swayed by her performance, casting her as the repentant victim and me as the heartless, unforgiving monster. It was in that moment that I realized the true depth of their dysfunction. They weren't interested in truth or genuine reconciliation. They were interested in comfort, in the easy, untroubled illusion of a happy family, and they were willing to sacrifice my well-being to maintain it. I was reaching my breaking point. The constant pressure, the feeling of being judged and misunderstood by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, was taking its toll. Then, Sarah escalated things in a way that finally forced my hand. She made a new public post, one that was so blatantly targeted and filled with such malicious insinuation that I could no longer ignore it. "It's sad when people can't move on," she wrote. "At some point, you have to ask yourself if they're just jealous or still hung up on what they lost." The implication was clear and vile. She was suggesting that my refusal to forgive her was rooted not in her betrayal, but in a lingering attachment to Derek. It was a lie so poisonous, so fundamentally insulting to my love for Daniel and the life we had built, that something inside me finally snapped. I was done being the bigger person. I was done being silent. The next day, I called my mother. I told her I would meet with her and Sarah. Not to reconcile, but to set the record straight, once and for all. She was overjoyed, completely misreading my tone, and eagerly arranged the meeting at her house. When I arrived, the atmosphere was thick with a tense, expectant energy. Sarah was there, a smug, self-satisfied look on her face, clearly believing she had finally won. She launched into her well-rehearsed speech about missing me and the importance of family. I let her finish. And then, I calmly, methodically, dismantled her entire narrative. I asked her about the Facebook post. She tried to deny its meaning, but I didn't let her. I told her, in front of our mother, that her insinuation that I was still hung up on Derek was not only a lie, but a disgusting attempt to rewrite history. I laid out the truth of her betrayal, the calculated cruelty of her actions, and her complete and utter failure, for years, to offer a single, genuine apology. I then turned to my mother. I told her I loved her, but that her constant emotional manipulation, her refusal to respect my boundaries, and her blatant favoritism had pushed me to a breaking point. I told her that I was no longer willing to participate in her fantasy of a perfect family. I was taking a step back from her, from Sarah, from all of it. Sarah, seeing her power crumble, resorted to her usual tactic: tears. Big, dramatic, performative sobs. But they had lost their power over me. They were just noise. "I've tried so hard," she wailed. "I don't understand why you hate me so much." I looked at her, at this woman who shared my DNA, but not my values, and I just laughed. A short, sharp, humorless sound. "I don't hate you, Sarah," I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong. "I just don't want you in my life." And then I stood up and I walked out. The relief was immediate and profound. It was like shedding a heavy, suffocating skin I had been wearing for years. I went home to Daniel, to my real life, to my real family. I blocked Sarah on every platform. I sent my mother a final, brief text, telling her I needed space and would not be attending any family events for the foreseeable future. I don't know if our relationship can be salvaged, and right now, I don't care. For the first time in my life, I have chosen my own peace over their chaos. And that is a victory worth everything.